It's been about 7 months since the iPhone 15 Pro Max was released. So in this video, we're going to do an iPhone 15 Pro Max extended review roundup. We're going to look at a couple different types of extended reviews. We're going to start with the 2-month reviews and then followed by 3-month and finally 6-month reviews. In terms of the YouTubers, for the 2-month review, we have Created by Ella. For the 3-month review, we have Justin She. I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry, Justin. And as well as MKBHD. And for the 6-month review, we have the channel 6 months later, Mac Rumors, and finally Max Tech. So let's start with the common themes amongst all the reviews, including myself. I have been using a iPhone 15 Pro Max since launch day, so a good 7 months at this point. So let's go over some of the common themes. So in terms of battery life, everybody agrees that the battery can last long enough through a typical day, with about 20 to 40% battery life remaining at the end of the day. Some of the reviewers saw some slight degradation over time, but still considered the battery life to be satisfactory. So for example, in my case, I found that the max battery capacity has dropped to 99% over a 7-month period. Apple states that the original battery was designed to retain 80% capacity at 1,000 cycles under ideal conditions. So 99% max capacity over 7 months is actually really good. In terms of build quality and design, everybody agrees that the titanium frame and the lower weight is really nice. It allows for a more comfortable experience and is also less prone to fingerprints compared to previous models. The edges are softer and there are thinner bezels as well, which makes the overall handling experience much better. Now, in terms of the camera system, there's an improved telephoto camera with the 5x optical zoom, which provides better zoom and photo quality, as well as better image stabilization. The 48 megapixel photos offer more detail and room for cropping, and overall the photo quality is sharper with excellent HDR and color. In terms of the action button, everybody agrees that it's very customizable and there's a lot of versatility. However, the placement and the ease of use really varies amongst the reviewers. One of the most common functions that people have assigned this button to is to quickly open up access to the camera. In terms of the USB-C port, everybody is in agreement that this is actually a big change, even though it's long overdue. It allows universal charging capabilities and faster data transfers compared to the original Lightning port. And everybody agrees that it's really nice to be able to just have one cord to be able to charge multiple devices. Now, in terms of the durability, the new titanium frame shows fewer scratches and holds up really well against normal use. However, if you still drop it, there could still be some significant or noticeable damage. And a lot of the reviews have stated that a screen protector is still recommended to mitigate scratches on the display. Now, in terms of iOS and the Apple ecosystem in general, with iOS 17, there were new features such as dynamic widgets, improved autocorrect, and better integration with other Apple devices in general. The continuity features, AirDrop, AirPods integration, all of those things really enhance the overall user experience. And that's what I found as well when using iOS 17 and the newest iPhone. So the general recommendations were that if you're upgrading from an older model like an iPhone 12 or earlier, it's going to be a huge upgrade. A lot of the reviewers do suggest waiting for the next model for even more significant improvements over the current one. And now that we're about 7 months since launch day and about 4 months out to the launch of the iPhone 16, it may be worth waiting for a certain group of people, but I'll talk about more of that later on in the video. Now, some of the common downsides and criticisms shared amongst all the reviewers are that repairability remains a huge challenge. So if anything breaks or if you need something replaced, you're probably going to need to bring it in to have it serviced at Apple or some type of third-party repair company. There's a lot of strict control over Apple's App Store, which limits app diversity and the cost when purchasing apps because the price can fluctuate depending on where you buy from. And also the front glass is still really prone to scratches despite the protective coatings. So now we're going to jump into some of the unique opinions of each one of these different YouTubers. We're going to start with Created by Ella, who did a 2-month review. So Ella mentioned that after 2 months of use, she felt that the iPhone 15 Pro Max felt really similar to previous generations, but had a few standout features. And she also mentioned that in general, the upgrade may not be meaningful for everyone, as many of the features are also available on the cheaper iPhone 15. In terms of the camera and photography, she mentioned that there are more choices than ever in terms of how you want to capture photos and videos. She gives a really detailed review of the different lenses and their performance differences. In terms of the main camera, she mentions that the 24 megapixel option provides significantly better photos than the 12 megapixel one. The 1.2 and 1.5 times crop shortcuts are nice, but the quality at 2 times crop is reduced. And the new 5 times telephoto lens offers a really unique perspective, but it still has some limitations in terms of low light and close focus. In terms of video capabilities, She mentions that using the Blackmagic camera app can optimize video recording, and the log footage offers high quality but requires post-processing. In terms of performance and battery life, she mentions that the new 3nm chip provides a performance boost and supports ray tracing for improved graphics, but she mentions that it's marginally faster than the previous generation and it still thermally throttles under heavy load. And then some other additional insights. She mentions that the main upgrades are more beneficial for semi-professional use, especially in video recording. Actually, the regular iPhone 15 shares many of the features, making it a more economical choice for general users. We have Justin with his 3-month review. In terms of user experience, Justin mentioned that there were some initial overheating problems. However, they've been resolved with software updates. In terms of iOS 17, there's minor but noticeable refinements that improve the overall user experience, especially better integration with macOS Sonoma. In terms of the display, the Super Retina XDR OLED display now has a peak brightness of 2000 nits, which improves visibility in bright outdoor conditions. The display size is still 6.7 inches, but the reduced bezels and slightly smaller form factor are really helpful for people with smaller hands. In terms of the main camera, there are minor improvements over the previous iPhone 14 because there were already really solid performance in photos or videos in older iPhones. He mentions that in terms of the zoom lens, the 5x zoom is nice, but he really wished that there was like a hybrid zoom up to 10x. For low light performance, there were notable improvements that had a more natural looking result. And in terms of video capabilities, they are definitely enhanced by Apple Log and ProRes. USB-C is really nice because it allows you to transfer files directly from an SSD, which makes the iPhone more viable for professional video creation. And then his final thoughts were similar to Ella's, which would be that this is a high recommendation for an upgrade for people that are upgrading from an older iPhone, such as an iPhone 12 or 13. And just like Ella mentioned, you're probably going to see better value when buying the iPhone 15 or 15 Plus because it has a lot of the same great features of the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max, while having the updated styling of the iPhone 15. We're going to talk about Marques Brownlee, who did another 3-month review. So in terms of the camera, he mentioned that even though the main camera had the option to change between multiple focal lengths, the 24, 28, and 35mm, he actually rarely used that option. He just left it on the 1x. And he actually prefers the crop button in iOS 17 for zooming in on the photos. In terms of the action button, he mentions that it's nice that it's customizable, but it's in a really awkward place, making it less convenient to use with one hand. The USB-C integration, he mentioned that for the baseline iPhone 15, it's only USB 2.0 speeds, but on the Pro phones, it's USB 3.2 speeds. And you can actually see the most difference when transferring ProRes files. Now, he does mention that even though it's nice to have the USB-C integration, he still needs to carry a lightning cable around for other accessories like the AirPods Max, the Magic Keyboard, and the Magic Trackpad. And then some general personal insights that he has. In his main iPhone 15 Pro Max review, he actually compared it to a Porsche 911, where both companies focus on incremental improvements and refinement over time. So because he just turned 30, he actually purchased a Porsche 911 for himself, so he appreciates this similar strategy that both companies have with the gradual enhancement. And something really cool about his extended review video is that the entire video was actually shot on an i15 Pro Max. Now, I watch a lot of MKB HD videos, and they're always really high quality, really crisp, clean, beautiful colors. And I wasn't even able to tell the difference until he said that at the end of his video. All right, next up, we're gonna get into the 6-month extended reviews. We're gonna start with a channel called 6 Months Later. So they only review products 6 months from launch. In terms of case preference, they said to avoid the fine woven case because it felt really flimsy and didn't hold up very well, even though this is opposite of my experience. You can watch those videos in the link here. And this channel said that they actually preferred using the silicone case because it provided more durability. In terms of the camera system, they felt like the telephoto camera was much more useful than the ultra wide. In terms of the action button, they said that it's useful, but it requires a habit change. So it becomes convenient once memory muscle develops. Now, they went over some features that they felt were utilized a lot less than they thought would be. So one of these features is the focus adjustment. This was rarely used because the camera already had really good automatic focus. The Apple Log for video, they felt like this wasn't really used much because of the large storage requirements. For the spatial video feature, they felt that this was less impressive than expected. They prefer recording the spatial video on the Apple Vision Pro itself rather than the iPhone. And for the new ray tracing support, they felt that this was not utilized due to their lack of interest in mobile gaming. Because because they weren't really a fan of the in-app purchase model. And then they went on to mention some of the downsides of being in the Apple ecosystem. So for example, the App Store control, again, it really limits app diversity and can increase costs due to Apple's fees. This reviewer mentioned that the higher Apple fees on the App Store have been very lucrative for Apple, where services is actually the #1 revenue generator. And they really feel like once you buy the phone, you should be able to decide where you want to download your apps from and get the best price on apps. Next, we have Mac rumors. So in terms of durability, this reviewer used their case naked for 6 months. They mentioned that initially it held up really well, but after some significant drops, that caused some scuffs and chips to show up on the titanium frame. However, the titanium frame shows fewer scratches for normal use compared to previous stainless steel models. And then finally, they mentioned that the screen has a few normal scratches, but a screen protector should help mitigate that damage. In terms of the camera, they consider the iPhone 15 Pro Max cameras to be the best available on any phone, and they look forward to any potential upgrades in the iPhone 16, specifically with any improvements with the ultra-wide sensor or the telephoto lens. And they talk about some future considerations. They would recommend waiting for the iPhone 16 for potentially bigger upgrades and improvements. However, they do acknowledge that the iPhone 15 Pro Max is still a really excellent choice, especially for anybody coming from an older model. And then finally, I want to end this extended review roundup with Max Tech, who did a 6-month review. I think he made some really great points about Apple's overall strategy, some major features you should be looking out for whenever you're upgrading to a new iPhone, and what are the specific features that make the iPhone 15 Pro Max a really big upgrade. So the first thing he does is talk about Apple's strategy for dominating the smartphone market, and he thinks that they're going to do this in 3 main ways. The first one is the Apple ecosystem. He believes that they're trying to enhance the interconnectivity among Apple products to retain customers. The second point is that he believes Apple is trying to offer really unique software features that make the iPhone more exclusive and attractive to customers. And then finally, doing incremental hardware improvements, providing regular updates to sets of features like the design, connectivity, display, battery life, and cameras. He goes on to mention that some examples of some of the legendary features before include the OLED display that was first introduced on the iPhone X, the massive battery life improvement that came up on the iPhone 11 Pro Max, the introduction of MagSafe on the iPhone 12, and then the ProMotion display on the iPhone 13 Pro. So when he's doing his extended review of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, he's looking to see if this phone has any legendary features like that. And he was able to identify 2 of them. The first one is the USB-C port. Even though a lot of other companies are going to laugh at this, USB-C is long overdue for the iPhones. He mentions that this really enhances the convenience and compatibility with a variety of devices. It enables charging of accessories like the AirPods and Apple Watch. So that's the first legendary feature. The next one is the 5x tetraprism camera. He says that it provides excellent stabilization across 3 axes, and he actually provides a video that shows this, which I thought was pretty amazing. When you look at the footage on the iPhone, it looks really shaky, but when you look at the file afterwards, it looks really smooth, even at the 5x zoom. Now, he mentions that the new camera delivers high quality zoom and impressive portrait photos with a better aperture. So it actually has a f2.8 aperture that gives that nice blurry background. And this 5x tetraprism camera is actually considered a major advancement in smartphone camera technology, something that other major companies like Samsung have actually adopted. Now, some of the other features that he talks about is the action button. He mentions that it's customizable for different functions, but it wasn't really used by him very much. But he's really excited about the potential for future improvements, especially with AI integration. So finally, he talks a little bit about the future expectations for the iPhone 16 series that should launch this September. Some of the anticipated upgrades include a larger display size, Wi-Fi 7, newer battery technology, a 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera. There's also potential for legendary features like the A18 Pro chip, which may enhance AI capabilities. And there's rumors of a new capture button that is supposed to mimic a pro camera shutter functionality, where if you half press on it, it'll focus on the subject. So overall, Max Tech says that the iPhone 15 Pro Max is highly recommended, especially for those who appreciate the significant improvements in USB-C and the new camera system. So I completely agree with a lot of the conclusions that a lot of these YouTubers made. I feel like the iPhone 15 Pro Max is still a solid purchase at this point in time, even though it's 7 months after launch. If you manage to get this at a used price or even refurbished, I think this is one heck of a bargain, because you're really getting the best iPhone available. And it's really hard to imagine how they can really improve on this, but I think this is a great purchase.